I know a lot of women that come to us and, they're like, I want a hormone test. Like, let's do it. But I'm like, hold your horses, because I would love for you to do a hormone test. But I also know that if we do a hormone test and we know that something is off, whether it's estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, whatever it is, I know it's off. Well, the question, great, we know that, but why? Right? So like every time we see something off, yes, why, and unpeel that onion back until, you really find that root. And a lot of the times starts with gut. Of course, other things too, but gut is one of those things.
Living a healthy, balanced life is no small feat, especially when you're a mom. With meals to cook, laundry to load, work to do, and humans to raise, it can be easy to feel like we're in an on-again, off-again relationship with healthy living. But it doesn't have to feel this way. I believe living a healthy life has become way too complicated. What we need isn't a new plan or program telling us what to eat or how to live. We need simple, uncomplicated routines and information that's going to help us live our best, most beautiful life without rules and restrictions. Join me, Kristin Dovbniak, holistic health coach, certified intuitive eating counselor, and mama of two, for weekly conversations on what it means to live a healthy, balanced life, uncomplicate eating, and simplify in every area of mom life. Hey friends, welcome back to the Healthy Balanced Mama podcast. Chris here, and I am back with another incredible guest interview. We are continuing our gut health series, and today we are digging into gut health and hormones, and really honestly, all of the things. So today we are digging into the role that gut health plays in hormone balance, in our mood. We talk about anxiety, we talk about PMS. We talk about, honestly, so many different aspects of how our hormones and our gut are so interconnected, and how so many of the simple things that we can do can really make a positive difference in our hormone balance, in our gut health, and helping our gut to help our hormone balance, and to help things like mood issues that we might be going through, or hormonal imbalances that we might be going through. I know that I talk in the interview, and I've talked about here on the podcast often, that I have struggled with both hormonal imbalances and gut imbalances, and I really didn't understand the connection for a long time. But when I really healed my hormones was when I really healed my gut was when I really healed my hormones. Healing them in tandem was what made such a difference for me. And today, our guest, Lahana, is going to share with us all about gut health, hormone imbalance, and how everything is interconnected. We talk about the importance of starting small, starting with the basics, not downplaying how important it can be to take care of those basics, to reduce stress in our life, to do those little things, but then how important it is to get tested, because so much of this is so individualized. And so she talks about some of the testing that she does with the women that she works with. And it was just such an incredible conversation. I had so much fun. It just felt like a chat with a friend about hormones and poop and all of the things. So if you are into any of that, if you have ever struggled with gut health, with hormone imbalance, with mood, or you're just curious about how all of these things are interconnected, you are going to love today's conversation. So for those of you who don't yet know Lahana Vigliano is the CEO of NuvaTrue Wellness and a board-certified clinical nutritionist. She holds a Bachelor of Nutrition Science degree and is almost finished, or just finished, with her Master's of Human Nutrition and Functional Medicine. She is passionate about women's health, especially gut health and hormones. She's obsessed with natural remedies, research, reading, weightlifting, and cooking. Outside of work, she's a mother of two and wife. Her family is the inspiration behind NuvaTrue and continues to encourage her through everything. So without further ado, let's jump into our conversation. Welcome, Lahana. I am so excited to have you on the Healthy Balanced Mama podcast today.
I am so excited to be here. I'm excited to chat hormones and just all the women's health things.
Oh my gosh, I love it. My listeners know I love talking women's health. So this is going to be such a great conversation. I love learning new things. But I love to start every interview with a fun little icebreaker. So what are you reading these days?
Okay, actually, and I'll get into this in my intro. I'm done with school right now. I'm on a break. I'm done with my degree, but I'm going to another degree. So right now I am schooled out and I am just wanting to read a fiction. So right now I'm reading The Safe Place. It's like I am a romance junkie usually, but this is more of a like, I guess a thriller or drama. So I am excited. It's really good so far.
Oh, fun. I have not seen that one, so I'll have to check that out if it's good. I like a good thriller, but I am also someone who I love to read. I read a lot for the podcast. You know, anyone who comes on the podcast with a book, I read their book. I love reading nonfiction, especially about health. But when I just want to relax, I love a good rom-com. That's like my favorite, or a thriller. So those are my favorites too. So I love that. For my listeners who don't know you yet, I already kind of introduced you in the introduction. But can you just share a little bit more about who you are and what you're really passionate about bringing to the world? I know you said that you just finished one degree and you're going on to another. So share what you're passionate about.
I'm passionate about being a student. No, I'm just kidding. I think we all are, especially in the space you have to be because health is always changing. But I am Lahana Vigliano. I am the founder of Newbie True Wellness. I'm a board certified clinical nutritionist. I just finished my master's degree in human nutrition and functional medicine, and I am going on to my doctorate in clinical nutrition next year. So I have a good 10-month break. I'm insane, I know. I have a passion of bringing the food as medicine aspect into the world of healthcare. I knew I wanted to be a doctor since I was like 5. I've always wanted to be in healthcare, as crazy as that sounds, because most people get in their 20s, they're like, I don't know what I want to do. I've always knew what I wanted to do, but it's funny, just a full circle. I am going to be a doctor, but just not the doctor that I expected to be. I was like aiming for just your regular MD. I was pre-med. I even went through like half my bachelor's was still pre-med. And then I realized how short healthcare comes for us who are actually looking to heal and not just put band-aids. So that's actually what brought me into this. It was just kind of a rude awakening when I was, in classes, and also becoming a young mom too at 18. And then we got married and had our daughter. So I have 2 kids. And I think just having the desire to not have my kids a statistic, me as a statistic in the healthcare world, because, obviously my goal is to grow up until I'm 100 and see my great grandkids. That's like my goal in life. And I just wanted to be able to live that like lifelong healthy journey. And I want that for my kids as well. So I think just being a young mom pivoted me into this passion as well. So it's kind of what brought me here to what I do today.
Oh, I love that so much. I found very much in my own journey. So I originally went to school for nutrition. And when I was in school for nutrition, I learned a lot about macronutrients and micronutrients, right? We learned about carbs, protein, and fats. We learned about vitamins and minerals. And we learned how to, balance those out. I was on the dietetics route to start, and then I ended up shifting into sports nutrition. And then what I do now, which is also food as nutrition, but more from the culinary side of things. But
I love that.
During all of this, right, I was struggling with a lot of digestive issues, which I know is something that you also specialize in. And I was going and seeing doctor after doctor, and, I got this medication or that medication, and it would help this thing, but then this thing would happen. And I was going back and forth, and I was like, there's got to be something else that I can do, right? There's got to be something. I'm in school for nutrition. There's got to be something I can do nutritionally. And at the time, I was really just diagnosed with acid reflux and IBS, which after eventually going into and seeing an incredible clinical nutritionist and working with him for several months, was able to tackle both of those things.
Nice.
With food, with supplements in that way. But I kind of had this inkling too, that there's got to be something else other than just trying to figure out what medications they were. And these doctors just literally looking at my scans and going, you're just inflamed. And I'm like, okay, so what do we do about that? And so I love that you have this passion, because I think that there's so many gaps in the world of medicine, and doctors are so incredible and they do so many important things, and they're there for a reason, right? And sometimes medication is necessary, but there's also so many things that we can do from a nutrition standpoint, right? And so I love that this is what you do. I love you're passionate about it. I love that you're also a mom of 2 and pursuing this incredible education and also educating others. So I love it.
People call me crazy. No, I agree with you. I think that there's so much more. And I've had lots of different conversations, even with like local gastro practices here in Austin. And I mean, I've heard it like, straight from their mouth of this is, the medication that we usually start with like IBS or whatnot. And then, if that doesn't work, well, we look for a different medication.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, I think just hearing that, even just from like, what? Like, I get it. And I know that there's a time and a place for it, but it just leaves a lot of people super defeated. And it's like, well, I guess I'm either stuck with taking this medication the rest of my life, or I'm stuck with like feeling like this because medication doesn't work. But I've always, and I know we'll talk like testing and stuff, but I've always found stuff. So I want anyone that's listening who's struggling with things like that, like there is hope, 100%. Like you're not broken.
Yes. Yeah. And there's so many options out there. It's just finding the ones that work for you, or the combination of them that work for you. And even if you are on medication, there's also things that we can do nutritionally and supplementally and to improve our health, whatever it is we're struggling with. So what we're going to talk about today is a topic I'm so excited about, because I've also struggled with hormonal imbalances, really my whole life, but I wasn't actually diagnosed until I'm 32 now, until I was 27. So I've only known for 5 years that I have an imbalance in my female and male hormones. So I have PCOS as my diagnosis.
Okay.
But I consider myself in remission now because I haven't had symptoms for several years now, which is great. But I have struggled with hormonal issues, just not knowing kind of where they stemmed from for a really long time. And I also struggled with gut health issues. And what is not talked about in the world, I think, or really just the world of health enough, is that there is a connection between our gut health and our hormone balance. Yeah. And so my listeners know, and they are literally 98% women. They know I love talking about hormones. They know I love talking about gut health. So I'm really excited to talk about this connection between gut health and hormone balance. So can you just start by giving us an overview? So like, how is our gut, and I know we know our organs are close by, but how is our gut and how are our hormones? And I know that hormones, we're talking a lot about, we're talking a lot about female hormones, but we know that hormones are an entire system in our body too. But how is our gut health and our hormones connected? How are they connected? How do they affect each other?
Yeah. I know this is definitely one thing. I agree with you. It's not really talked about that much. And it should be, because it is really important. I know a lot of women that come to us and, they're like, I want a hormone test. Like, let's do it. But I'm like, hold your horses, because I would love for you to do a hormone test. But I also know that if we do a hormone test and we know that something is off, whether it's estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, whatever it is, I know it's off. Well, the question, great, we know that, but why? Right? So like every time we see something off, we gotta ask why, and unpeel that onion back until, you really find that root. And a lot of the times starts with gut. Of course, other things too, but gut is one of those things. And I mentioned that because I like to make sure that people work, especially when they're doing like functional medicine testing. It's not like cheap. So I want to make sure that people are working like in the right order, especially when they're sharing like how they're feeling. And even just by symptoms, we can kind of send up red flags in our head of like, okay, yeah, this might be a little off. So starting with gut, the gut is connected to everything. And I think it's so incredible. And I feel like even the people who specialize in gut, whether it's a gastroenterologist or like us who specialize in gut health, like honestly, we still don't know like 1% of it. Like, I feel like there's so much of the microbiome that is unknown and research is still coming out. I think it's really exciting. So anyone that tells you they know every single thing about gut, I'm like, no one actually knows anything about the gut. We're actually just one big walking microbe, if I'm being completely honest. But, I will do a little side note before I mention it. Adrenals are really big in sex hormones, which makes our stress hormone. And I say this because a lot of underlying gut infections and imbalances, whether it's bacteria or yeast or parasites, a lot of that is very, very stressful on the body. So when we think about adrenal health, we think about like, that's a really tough job I'm doing. I'm struggling in this relationship. I was in traffic for 4 hours a day. Like those are the external stressors we think of, but we really don't think of the internal stressors. And the gut holds a lot of the internal stressors. And then that affects sex hormones. So sex hormones like estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, a lot of it really is a symptom of something bigger. having high estrogen, having low testosterone, high testosterone, those are actually not the root cause. It's what's causing them to be out of balance. So there, to me, are like one of the last dominoes to actually be affected. So that's kind of how it stems in the sense of gut adrenal then affecting sex hormones way. And then the other way is that when there is an imbalance in the gut, a lot of the bacteria actually are connected to having influence on an enzyme called beta glucuronidase. And what this enzyme does, and it's increased just by having too much E. coli, which sounds crazy because I think we think food poisoning, but it's actually a naturally reoccurring species in the gut. And the gut's always like fluctuating. It'll never be perfect. And this is coming from like a perfectionist, just FYI. Anytime I get lab tests back, I'm like, how can we perfect this? But when it's really high, strep, staph, E. coli, these are the things that increase this enzyme. And what this enzyme does is it basically, think of your hormones and they're like packaged in a low present and it's ready to be excreted out of the body. Well, this enzyme actually unties your package and it allows it to get reabsorbed back into the body. So this is one of the reasons why like estrogen dominance can occur. So you're trying to like, you're detox through it and now you're trying to make it leave and it's getting reabsorbed. So that's another huge, I would say probably the biggest connection I see with hormones and gut.
That's so interesting. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And I love that analogy of like, okay, it's ready to go. And nope, not time.
Yeah, like come back to the party.
Yes. Okay. So then you mentioned a couple things that might be going on with our gut. I'm curious, how do we know if our gut health is affecting our hormone balance? So for the woman listening who's like, okay, maybe I have gut health. Is it affecting my hormones? Or maybe I have a hormone imbalance. How do I know if, we've kind of established that our gut is likely part of it. So how do we know?
Yeah. Testing is going to be your main thing to do. And that's why, honestly, a lot of women coming to us that have symptoms, it is obvious that there's hormonal stuff going on, but we usually will start with stool testing. And I like the looks are awesome. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, I'm coming to you for like hormones? Why are we testing my poop? I'm like, promise there's a reason. And it is for this reason, because I want to make sure that we're checking off boxes of what are those underlying factors that could be throwing off your hormone. Because like I said, you can do hormone testing all you want. I see hydrogen. Great. Well, guess what? We got to do a stool test. So you might as well just get that done out of the way. So we do like a functional medicine stool test that tests for the microbiome, like parasites, yeast, bacteria, but it also tests for inflammation, digestion markers, short-chain fatty acids, how your immune system's working, the whole shebang. But it actually does test for this enzyme beta glucuronidase. So that way we can kind of know like, okay, this is high. We do have to try to inhibit this and make sure that we're bringing down those bacteria levels that it's, making this high in the first place.
Okay. I want to backtrack really quick because I think I skipped too far ahead. What are some symptoms or what are some really common symptoms you see of hormone imbalance that, could be linked to these kind of gut health issues?
Okay.
Or the gut health. That didn't come out right. So what are some of the symptoms of hormone imbalance that you see that could be linked to the gut? Yeah.
Yeah. And I will say too, it's funny because so many hormonal imbalances, like symptoms are the same. So if it's high testosterone, high estrogen, thyroid problems, like I feel like all the hormones, like they're very similar. So usually we see like struggling to lose weight, really bad fatigue, bad PMS, so really painful periods. I would say even like water retention. What are some other things that I see? I said fatigue, even headaches. I definitely see headaches a lot too. I would say that those are probably my most common that stand out to me when I think of hormonal imbalances. Of course, the obvious, so like irregular cycles, not only painful, but irregular cycles, skipping cycles, etc.
Well, I think what's so interesting is all those things you listed are things I think a lot of women brush off as just like, oh, well, it's just normal to have a period that's super painful. Or it's just, normal to feel bloated all the time or to feel fatigued all the time or to I have these headaches, on and off. And it's like, no, if these things are reoccurring, then just because it's common doesn't mean it's normal. Something might be imbalanced. And I think I didn't even realize that there was another way to live until I started healing my PCOS and I stopped having like PMS at all.
Yeah.
I have an app, but it needs to have some sort of an alarm on it that's like, hey, PS, guess what's going to happen soon? Because it sneaks up on me every single month. And I'm like,
Yeah, it does.
I've had my cycle for like 20 years now. And every month it's still like, and it wasn't coming every month for a long time either. My cycles were super irregular. And that and plus some other symptoms were what brought me into my doctor initially. Took
Yeah.
for healthcare practitioners to actually get me some sort of a diagnosis. But that's why we're chatting, because it's hard, because I think I had a lot of similar symptoms too, or in that bucket of symptoms that I would have chalked up to, not getting enough sleep, or which is obviously
Aging.
a symptom. Yeah, exactly. I'm just getting older. I'm tired. I've got 2 kids, right? And so, but looking back and going, wow, I don't experience that anymore because I've worked on healing my hormones and also my gut. So I think that's so interesting. So for the woman listening who's like, oh my goodness, I have like 5 of those symptoms, it could be your hormones. I think they're really common. Hormone imbalances are really common, I think, and more common than we think. But there's so much that we can do to take care of our hormones.
Agreed.
So
I love that you said that you also like this, like you knew this level, but then when you actually started healing, like you like went up a level. And then when you realize like what that next level is, and you're like, holy crap, I've been living at this level, like below, but this was like your normal at one point. I love that.
Yeah, no, it is amazing. Actually, it was funny. My husband and I were having a conversation in the car the other day. I have a friend who's pregnant, and we were talking about some symptoms that she was having, and he was joking because I have 2 kids. You do too, right? And so she's newly pregnant, and she's not, she's never had any kids before. And so she's asking me, she's like, is this symptom normal? Is this symptom normal? And I'm like, okay, if you're really concerned, like go to your doctor. I am not a doctor, but from my experience, there are a lot of symptoms that are normal, and it's, or quote unquote normal. You really just have to go, and there's not much you can do other than go to your doctor and be like, what is this normal? Is this not? But anyway, I was talking to my husband about, he's like, those symptoms just sound like PMS symptoms. And I was like, hey, I don't even have PMS anymore. And he was like, you don't. And he just sort of realized it. And I was like, no, I don't have the like terrible back pain, the terrible cramping, like the headaches, the super fatigue, any of these things before my cycle anymore. But it's interesting because I did work on healing my gut in tandem with working on healing my hormones, but I hadn't really made that connection like we're kind of making today. So let's talk about the food side of things, because that's my favorite. I'm also a chef. I have a nutrition background, but I'm a chef, and I love to talk about that. So what foods do you recommend for gut health first and foremost? So if you're like, these are like the top things that you could add in, or even things that, you might want to shift away from, what are those main things that we can add in for gut health? And maybe even specifically relating to hormone balance, or if, you want to give some hormone specific foods too. Let's dig into the food side of things.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So, I mean, definitely you can never go wrong with like nourishing fruits and vegetables. And I will say too, everyone's very different. So we find people who can't have broccoli and people that can. So like, even though these are pretty basic food groups, everyone's still pretty different. But for the most part, fruits and vegetables and high quality protein, I think protein's like my rock star personally, because I see so many women that do not get enough by any means. And it's honestly the secret to me, like to anti-aging, because as we lose muscle against aging, like there's nothing else we can do about that. It's just aging process, but we can support with good protein to reduce that and age very well and support our hormones and support our detoxification. Protein is so huge. And so high quality protein, organic, grass-fed, wild caught seafood, like such a fan of high quality protein. And also healthy carbs. I know in this day and age, everyone's scared of, I don't know, right now it's like, it's still carbs, but I'm telling you, like we already went through our fat phobia, now in the carb phobia. I'm telling you, like next decade, it's going to be like a protein phobia. And I say that because it's really silly, because all of this really does matter. And studies do show that a lot of the drastic things like going keto, so going high fat can mess with actually beta glucuronidase and your microbiome and stuff. And so I find that there needs to be a really healthy balance between everything of carbs, proteins, and fats. They all play a role. And so like our healthy favorite carbs are going to be like potatoes and gluten-free grains. One of the things I would mention that I see a lot to avoid is wheat, in my opinion. I just feel like it's just not the same the way it used to be. It's definitely not the bread Jesus broke bread with. And it's definitely even not the bread that the Europeans eat. Ours is so different here in the US. And there was a study, and it has always stuck out to me, but it showed that no matter who you were, there were people that were celiac, people that were sensitive, people that were allergic. And there's your average person that has like no allergy, sensitivity, celiac to wheat. But in every single person in that study showed that they had increased intestinal permeability, AKA leaky gut. And even in the average person. So you can't use the excuse of like, oh, but I'm not sensitive. Oh, but I'm not allergic. Oh, I don't have celiac. No, it still affects you. Mm-hmm. So I love helping people switch to even honestly more nutrient dense options anyway. Like instead of regular nasty white flour tortillas, do like almond flour tortillas, like just there's so much more nutrient density in other foods. Not saying that you have to avoid like pasta, like we love jovial brown rice pasta, like our freaking favorite, and you would never tell the difference. But I think all of those are really important. And for hormones, I would actually highlight cruciferous vegetables and even citrus fruits because they are high in glucuronic acid. I think I said that correctly, which also helps inhibit beta glucuronidase, that enzyme. So we all know citrus, and cruciferous is those broccoli, kale, cauliflower, Brussels. Did I say kale? I feel like most of the majority of vegetables, to be honest. Those cruciferous vegetables help promote proper hormone detoxification in the liver. So I don't know if we'll chit chat about hormone testing. Maybe we will, but I love the Dutch hormone testing for this reason. And this is where we start emphasizing more cruciferous vegetables, is because your estrogen can go down different pathways, and it can go down a more protective pathway, which is should. Most of it, 80% of it should. And then the other two pathways, 4-OH and 16-OH, can be really dangerous and can actually damage DNA, increase your risk for breast cancers. Some of them can give you those intense PMS feelings, but you could actually have like perfect estrogen and all that. So this is something that I feel is missed, because if they look at your hormones, like, oh, your actually hormones are within range, it's fine. But your detox is favoring the 16-OH and can give you like estrogen dominant symptoms. This could be a reason for, needing to focus on cruciferous vegetables to help shift that more protective pathway. So cruciferous vegetables really, really, really shine in both gut health and hormones. So that would probably be my, number one thing to recommend there.
Okay. Well, I have a follow-up question then.
Yeah.
I would love to talk for a couple minutes about detoxing specifically and detoxing our hormones. So I think detox is a buzzword in the health world. And there are so many things out there that are like, this detox tea is going to fix all of your health issues and you're going to lose 20 pounds this weekend. And I think most of us listening understand that that's a gimmick, and we're not just going to, those things aren't going to happen. And if you're listening, maybe listen to some of the other episodes with some of my other experts too.
Yeah.
Including this one. Keep listening, because that's not the way to go. But it is important that we support our body's detoxification system, right? So the liver, the kidneys, depending on what we are detoxifying. And detoxifying estrogen is one of those things. So do you recommend that like the average woman work on focusing on maybe eating certain foods or, drinking certain drinks, or, is there anything specific that the average woman should do to help support estrogen detoxification? Or is this something where you're like, well, it's really if you've done the testing and we see that it's going down the wrong pathway? Where do you kind of stand on that? And how can we sort of do that? How can we support our bodies in that way?
For supplements, yes. Like I don't really recommend a lot of supplements unless there's testing for it. Only because it's a lot stronger. But I think for food, we can definitely, all of us can start on the basics. So I think we can all start with cruciferous vegetables, like eating more vegetables. I mean, we all know that, like we need to do that. And that naturally helps support detox. But if you really look at like liver detox, which is the main organ that really takes the burden of a lot of detoxification. And I agree with you. I think I see it on social media and stuff of like, and this is more like non-holistic people. But like, you don't need a sport detox. Like you you have organs that know how to do it. But the thing is that we're exposed to so many more toxins in this day and age than we ever have been. And that's why we do have to prioritize it, just supporting your natural body detox. Cause yeah, like no like special tea or supplement is going to help you do that. So if you look at the foundations of what the liver needs to actually function is going to be in phase 1 and phase 2. And phase 1 needs a lot of nutrients. It's actually really, really reliant on a lot of B vitamins, a lot of antioxidants, vitamin C, vitamin E, because a toxin, whether it's estrogen or a toxin that's coming into phase 1 of your liver, it's going to actually be more dangerous leaving phase 1. So it needs to quickly shift into phase 2 and just like it's an assembly line. So the B vitamins, all your nutrients will support phase 1. Antioxidants will support your body, making sure to minimize damage of the hormone and the toxin leaving phase 1. But phase 2 is going to be so reliant on protein, like really reliant on protein. And this is where I see the whole detox phases, because they'll do like juice cleanses or just, I don't know, all these things that really like nourish you and give you lots of nutrients, but they lack protein. So what people are doing is that they're shuttling all this through phase 1, yet it's damaging them. It's actually causing it because their phase 2 is really sluggish because they're not having enough protein. So that's why I'm like so pro balance of yes, getting your fruits and vegetables and getting all those nutrients, but then you also need the high quality protein so that that detox pathway can work well. And then, pooping is phase 3. So that's where gut health comes in. So if you're not pooping every day, you're not detoxing.
Yes. Oh
Naturally.
my gosh.
So
that was such a great explanation of it.
Thank
Like
you.
really, really great, because I think most of the people listening probably, and I'm like thinking back to like pictures of the whole detox.
Right.
There's been a long time since I, was studying holistic nutrition and like, that I actually really thought about this, because I don't practice like you do. But it is so true. And I know I see a lot of people doing those. Like I'm a huge fan of green juice too, especially, more greens than not. Right. But they also, when I'm, in my earlier years of not knowing as much as I do about the importance of balance, the importance of protein and healthy fats and all that, I've been on plenty of juice cleanses and I'm always like starving and hangry the whole time. And I realized it's because, my blood sugar is not balanced. And so then what I ended up doing, I don't do this anymore, but what I ended up doing was doing like, making it through like 2 or 3 days of this juice cleanse, feeling hangry, feeling, awful, super fatigued. And then I was like, well, I've done it. So then I'm just going to go, eat all these things that I know don't make me feel very good. And then I feel like I'm just picturing in my head, like everything like in phase 1 of my detox, just like bogged up. Just like,
yes.
My body's like, what is happening? And so it's those natural things we can do to support it. Making sure that we are pooping regularly is such an important thing. My friends know that I'm the person they can come to talk to about poop. You never have to be shy talking to me about poop, because not just the digestive issues I've gone through. It's like, no, it's such an important part of our health, and we don't realize that regularly going is a signal that our bodies are, or it's one signal that our bodies are doing what they're supposed to do. They're getting rid of that excess waste, and so. I love that. There are things that we can all do, eat more of those cruciferous vegetables, get lots of those veggies and that fruit, but get in that protein. So huge.
Yeah. Agreed.
So I would love to shift into talking about some more lifestyle shifts too. I know I love talking about the food, but I would love to talk about what are some of those lifestyle type things that like the average woman can do, whether or not she's gotten this testing and she knows that she has a hormonal imbalance, a gut imbalance, or both, which is oftentimes the case. What are some of those lifestyle things she can do? And then maybe some supplements that you would recommend. I know that supplements are super, super individualized, but if there are like, general, this is really helpful if you're experiencing these symptoms, I would love to kind of hear what your recommendations are.
Yeah. I think the biggest lifestyle thing is going to be reducing stress. And I know like that's very different for everyone. And I like even keeping it simple of just like making time for doing something you love. But ultimately when we're stressed, our immune system is decreased, and that's what allows things to be overgrown in the gut. And as well as just like that direct correlation of stress to our hormones. But making time for doing something you love, that journaling and meditation and therapy, like whatever works for you to reduce stress, I think is the number one thing we could all work on. And a lot of the time when you start talking about stress, it's really hard decisions too, of like assessing what's stressing you out and like, what do you need to change? Like maybe that is your work stressing you out. What does that look like? Does that mean finding a new job? Does that mean having a hard conversation with your boss? And these are all the things. I think we all want like quick fixes, but I find that most people will not find healing unless they start really working on reducing this and taking this into consideration too. Going back to pooping, totally right up your alley. Like my husband jokes that I cannot leave a conversation without talking about poop, which may or may not be true. But you do need to go to the bathroom every day. And I find that, if constipation is an issue, there's supplements, magnesium citrate. I mean, those are those things. Senna leaf. I know there's like the poop ease. What is it called? Oh, there's a tea that has like a different blend of like herbal laxatives, which is great. But going back to lifestyle, I actually find myself in that situation. It's honestly when I'm just like really busy and my body never really has time to rest. And I always have the best bowels, consistent bowels, when I have like just like a routine, but not just a routine, like having time to actually sit down in the morning and like planning my day. And I'm just drinking my matcha and I'm just, doing all these things. And like, I don't know, I talked to this with one of my dietitians. It's so crazy because I'm like, oh, my body's at rest. It's like, oh, you gotta go for your morning poop. And it'll happen when I'm like out the door, just scrambling. And I do believe that we are in charge of our life. I know you might feel like in the season, like, oh, I can't, I'm so busy. I believe that you can change that if you really, really wanted to change that. I really do. And maybe if it's a job and you can't change that like hour, you can get up earlier. You can go to bed earlier to get up earlier to have that peaceful morning. But going to the bathroom is really important. And then I love L-glutamine. I feel like that's a pretty basic supplement to help support the intestinal lining. It's amazing for your intestinal cells. And then calcium D-glucarate is also really great. I can't think of anything off the top of my head of any things to like watch out for, but calcium D-glucarate, it helps inhibit the beta glucuronidase enzyme, but the enzyme is also helpful too. So you don't want it too low. So yes, testing before supplementing that with that is great, but that's a wonderful supplement if you do struggle with having this higher level of enzyme.
L-glutamine was one of those supplements that I was introduced to on my gut health journey. And I don't know I know that it's really helpful, but it was one of those things that really authentically made a difference and made me feel better. I think because it reduced so much of that inflammation in my gut, it was like just in a few weeks, I started feeling better. I started feeling like things were more regular. It was really interesting. And I'm like, what did I change? I literally just added the L-glutamine. And I know that everyone's different. Everyone's body is different, but it was what my body needed at that time. And so that was one of those that I know that I go back to whenever my gut health is, or whenever I get a little bit off. I have mini flare-ups every now and again. And whenever I do, it's because I'm stressed out. So
yes,
100% with you on, we really can make changes to our lives when we need to. But I think sometimes we just need that little push that we need to take that time for ourselves. And our health depends on it. And I think we hear it so much. We talk about reducing stress, and we talk about self-care on the podcast so much because almost every expert I have come on is like, you need to take care of yourself. You need to find ways to reduce stress. And I feel like I hear the moms listening and go, yeah, I know I'm supposed to do that, but I don't have time.
Exactly.
But exactly.
You have to. I mean, even I remember one of my professors said that it's amazing how many health issues go away, even when you help someone understand and find the reason that they're even here on this earth, like that inner passion, that inner source of why am I here? And once they find that, a lot of their health issues start to go away. So like, I mean, there's so much internally stress and how we feel, mental health. I know it is one of those, that's why I'm saying like, when you talk stress, you kind of get on a soapbox and everyone just kind of tunes it out. Like, it's like, I'm in the season of life, which you may be in a season of life, higher stress. I do believe that you can change and improve that. I don't think that has to be your life, even with little kids. And I'm the woman that juggles all the hats. I have gone to school full-time, worked full-time, ran a business, and raised kids. So I totally understand juggling and having a lot on your plate. I still think it's doable.
Yeah. Yeah. Coming from you. I mean, if you think it's doable, right?
It's
And I
doable.
think it's those times it's the times we think that we don't have time to take care of ourselves. We need to take care of
Hmm.
ourselves the most. It's just figuring out how to do that. And sometimes it's the simplest things, right? Like it's taking a
Netflix and
couple
chill over
minutes to
here.
breathe. It is, yep, it's taking those couple minutes to journal. It's meditating for 5 minutes. It's doing something
Hmm.
like just something little you can to bring yourself to that place of feeling less stressed. And the more we can do that, the more we let our bodies, be in that place of feeling a little bit less stressed, especially in those crazy busy seasons. So, okay, so
Yes.
let's dive in then. This is something I already wanted to ask you about. But let's talk about, we were already talking about stress. Let's talk about our gut health and our mood and our
Yes.
emotions, because as much as we can do things to reduce our stress, I am someone who doesn't just have gut and hormone issues, but I've also struggled with anxiety my whole life. So I'm just a whole
Feel
fun
you.
bag of
I
all the
feel
things.
you. I
So
understand.
I want to know more about gut health and anxiety and mood and how improving our gut health can help to improve our mood.
Yeah. Oh no, I'm totally with you. I will say like that's my downfall. Like I can have movement down, I can have food down, but like reducing stress is like the thing I have to focus on. Like that's the thing that my weakness, I guess, so to speak. So I understand how the balance, like in the forcing you to be able to do that. And with that can lead into like anxiety. So I know when I'm getting overwhelmed, if I start feeling anxious, I'm like, all right, gotta back off, gotta listen to my body. What do I need to do? But I think it's amazing, the connection, the gut brain connection, I should say, because there is the enteric nervous system and it goes from your brainstem into your stomach. Your vagus nerve is a part of that. And I mean, if we really think about it, it's all intertwined, even when we're in that fight or flight, stressful mood, that actually down regulates gut motility. So I don't know if you've been really stressed and you would eat and it just kind of feels like it sits there, it just doesn't digest right, because that's the whole, like your whole nervous system and your gut. It's like, it's just so intertwined. I think it's so incredible. But certain bacteria can actually produce neurotransmitters that influence mood. So these are things like dopamine and serotonin and GABA. So serotonin is a neurotransmitter that plays a role in like happiness and just mood, which is why a lot of antidepressants and stuff are based around serotonin. Dopamine, that's our reward and pleasure. And then our GABA is our very calming neurotransmitter. So it's really important for more of the anxious people. So the bacteria in your gut influences the production of these. So I think that's incredible, because if you do have low serotonin, truly, is the answer to just give a medication that creates that, or is it to address the gut bacteria that plays a role in making serotonin? And I mean, this is not just me, and it's not just a theory. I mean, there's studies to back it up and stuff. I also find parasites. I don't know if I think I might have found some research on it, but I think just clinically I see this. I see a lot of anxiety really high when people have parasites. It makes sense, because it can be a very inflammation generating thing. So inflammation can definitely cause anxiety. It causes that internal stressor. So parasites are definitely linked to anxiety as well. So with everything, when you look at anxiety, it is a symptom of something more, and it possibly could be something you can change externally, lifestyle. But like I usually will want to run a stool test on people with anxiety, and I swear, like I think there was only one person that I didn't find anything in, but most people I find something off. So there's just a really strong connection, mostly with the neurotransmitters. I know that's definitely very well research based.
So would you recommend then something like a prebiotic or a probiotic or something like that to help with someone with anxiety? Are there specific strains that are, more helpful? I know that there are the strains of bacteria that help to produce them, but is there something that we could supplement with, or some foods that we could eat, something we could do to kind of help our gut health if we are struggling with anxiety?
Yeah, there's definitely just a basic probiotics I think would be helpful for anyone. I think supporting with healthy carbs, those potatoes and healthy starches will help feed, right? Because it's not just about replenishing them. Like, okay, you take a probiotic or replenish them, but we got to make sure that the environment is thriving. Like it can make them thrive. And that's where those starches that they can eat on, and then producing short chain fatty acids, which also helps colon health in general. So I think producing and eating the right like starchy foods as well as not starchy foods. I mean, everything does play a role in your diet, but also replenishing them. And I would say if you haven't had a test, I mean, I love like even Claire Labs Therabiotic. I mean, that's a pretty basic one. It has lactobacillus and bifido. But one thing I do love about stool testing, at least the one we do, it assesses your probiotic and like the bad. So like the E. coli and staph and all that. But I love that test because then I can see exactly what strains you're low in, and I can supplement you the ones that you actually need. So there's definitely still a chance that you could be taking like this pretty good basic probiotic, has a lot of things, but maybe all those strains you actually aren't low in. And that's why testing helps. So you're not frustrated with like, oh, I'm trying everything natural, it's not working. So, I mean, yes, food and diet, supplements, prebiotics are helpful, but I like to actually get those via food if I can.
Yeah.
Unless there is a resistant starch, those are really great too for supporting your bacteria. So it's like potato salad, cooked in cooled potatoes, cooked in cooled rice, green banana flour, things like that can help promote the growth of bacteria as well.
It's so fascinating because I think we think anxiety, we think mood issues, and we're like, well, I've just got to go and I've got to start like top down, right? But oftentimes it is related to those gut issues, right? I'm like, it's not bottom up, sort of.
Kind of, yeah, actually.
Kind of bottom up. We have to also focus on too, because yes, there is the, outside things that can really help us. Going to therapy, I'm a huge advocate of therapy, going to therapy, reducing our stress, but getting, going to see a nutritionist and going, can I get some testing done and figure out if my gut health is out of whack? And so how do our hormones play into this too, to bring kind of hormones back into things when it comes to our mood? I know that we have our stress hormones, but how does that play into things like anxiety, depression, or even like hormone related mood disorders like PMDD? So how does that kind of play in? And what do you recommend? Where do you recommend people start for that, other than kind of like obviously the stool testing for the gut health side of things?
Yeah. There's definitely hypothyroidism, which is huge in women now. That also causes depression. With hypothyroidism, you can kind of think that's like the king of our metabolism, and it's a huge controller of like all the body's processes. But when you think hypothyroidism, you think everything's sluggish. So that also includes sluggish mood, so like depression. So I see that a lot as well. I would say blood sugar is so huge here, just blood sugar balance, and really trying to aim for that. So eating enough, I can't even recommend that enough of eating enough, because so many women come to us and they're not eating enough. They're eating actually the amount toddlers need, like 1,300 calories. And that could be the reason for anxiety, or just trying to fast or intermittent fast or whatever. And maybe their hormones are just not in a place to do that. And so that's very stressful in the body. So when that happens, when your blood sugar is like on this crazy roller coaster, when your blood sugar drops, adrenaline releases, and that leaves us with anxiety. So if we don't eat enough or don't eat just often enough, then you're going to fall into that anxiety thing too. And I totally have felt that before. When I would eat breakfast a little bit too late, then I would start to feel blood sugar drop. I could feel my adrenaline kicking in to help kind of shuttle that glucose from stored places into my bloodstream. And then later on, an hour later, I have anxiety. And that's why. So I love the blood sugar hormone relation to anxiety as well. But yeah, that's kind of all I want to say about that.
Okay, I think you just dropped a couple bombs, not for me, but I think for the women listening who are like, wait a second, what do you mean? All of these diets out there tell me that I'm supposed to eat like 1,200, 1,300 calories. And I was in that place years ago when I did fitness competitions, and it was like,
oh my gosh,
it was when I was bodybuilding, it was a little bit more than that, like a little tiny bit more than that. But that's what the recommendation was always, like baseline, like, the normal, that I'm using quotation marks, the normal person should eat about 2,000 calories a day. But, if you're a woman who wants to lose weight, you need to eat 1,200. And when I found out that that is literally what a toddler needs, like 1,200, 1,300 calories, I'm like, and I have a toddler and she eats quite a bit some days. And I'm like, how is it that grown adults, professionals are recommending other grown adults to eat the amount a toddler does?
I've actually wondered that, because I know it's super unhealthy, and we've seen people like you have done it, but like years, decades later, they have so many issues. It's insane. But I've always wondered, because I've never like worked with anyone, like me, myself, I haven't worked with a trainer, someone that specializes in it. I've always wondered, like, I wonder how much like they can eat, like how much they're allowed to. Is it because it's so small amount of food?
Well, like what I would eat very small amounts, like all day long, basically just so that I wasn't constantly hungry was what it was.
Okay.
But it was like a very small amount of food. It was mostly focused on lots and lots of protein, which is good. And I actually started eating more protein when I was bodybuilding because I was trying to gain muscle. And I actually did start feeling a lot better in certain ways, right? I wasn't constantly hungry all the time. My blood sugar was a little bit more balanced. But it was so little. And I ended up, it was right after my time bodybuilding that I ended up experiencing such severe hormonal imbalances that I ended up getting my PCOS diagnosis. So I was eating super little. I ended up having an adrenal crash after doing my last bodybuilding competition. And it was like a month after I woke up one morning and I was so tired and I was so exhausted, but I thought in my head that I have to go and lift weights. And I could not even lift a 10-pound weight. And I was like, oh my gosh, what? Because I was lifting way more than that at that point. And I was like, what is going on with me? And I was so scared that there was like something going on. So I went to the doctor, and that was how I got in the rabbit hole of, wow, there is something not right. And it was like, well, your stress hormones are shot because you've been eating so little for so long and you've been pushing your body so much for so long. And I think so many of the women who are out there who are like, well, I just want to lose some weight, or I want to feel better, and so I'm going to go on this plan or that plan. And they're so restricted. And it's like, no, you have to eat enough, not just to feel good, but to give your body the nutrients to heal, really.
Yeah. I think it's so crazy that women come to us and they're like, and we're not like calorie counters by any means, but I do think it's a great tool to make sure you are eating enough. Because most people actually use it to restrict and we use it to add. So when we actually look at what they're eating, I'm like, okay, no, you need to be eating like based on activity, like 1800, 1900, 2000, 2100. They're like, what? Like, I don't think I can do that. I'm like, I mean, you got to slowly work your way up, but like this is the issue of why you're tired, why you're having hormonal balances. Like, you can't expect to, I always say, like, your hair and your reproductive system, of course, like as women, we like love our healthy hair and we love to be able to reproduce babies and have good periods and all that. But like, why do you expect that to be optimal when you're eating so little? Because your body is always going to prioritize survival. It's going to prioritize your brain, your lungs, your heart. You don't need babies to be alive. So that's one of the first things to go. You don't need hair to be alive. So that's also one of the first things to go. And so I think we just need to shift that thinking, or think about it in that way of fueling your body and what that's going to do for your hormones in the long run. Like, you can't expect to put in little gas and be thriving.
Yes. Yeah. No, 100%. And I've seen that, very much firsthand for myself and a lot of my friends. So I'm like, you need to eat more. It's, we have that conversation. I'm like, I promise you will feel so much better if you balance your blood sugar and you are eating more consistently. It makes such a difference. And there really is these simple things. Like, I love that everything that you've mentioned is other than, there's a couple of supplements they can go out and get, right? But other than that, these are simple things. These are simple things we can add in. They're simple practices that we can do. None of this is crazy outrageous. If you are in a point of distress with your hormones or with your, gut health, then that's when you go and see someone and you get the testing done and you really dig in. Because if you are at that point, if you tried all the things, then you need to go see someone. I'm a huge advocate for that too. But a lot of these things are really simple things that we can do. We can make sure we're eating more. We can make sure we're eating enough protein. We can add in more cruciferous vegetables. It's the time of the year to add in more cruciferous vegetables, add in more citrus. We can do these things and it doesn't have to be crazy hard. So I love this so much. So I just want to really briefly touch on intermittent fasting. And then I want to talk a little bit about PMS because we brought it up earlier. And so I'm sure that there are people listening who are like, or women listening who are like, please talk about that more. So intermittent fasting is a huge trend right now.
Yes.
Pro intermittent fasting, not. I know you were talking about, its effect on blood sugar balance. It's a huge trend right now. Who's it good for? Who isn't, right? Like,
I I do. And I actually want to say the studies that have been done on it is great. It's fantastic. But I think it just depends on who you are and what you're going through. So like if you are struggling with hormonal issues, or if you are feeling very stressed, even you don't even have to test, you just know you're a stressed out person. Or you're also the person that's not eating enough. I find that it's not, I like to call it a season for you to intermittent fast.
Yeah.
And I only say that because when you restrict time even further, let's say you eat at 11 a.m. and stop at, 6 or 7 p.m. I find that like, if you can't get your food you need in your body for the, 12 plus hours you're awake, I don't think you can even get it in a restricted form. So I would rather you work on getting enough. And then once you become, pro at it and you are getting enough and you can't, your stomach can, a lot of people feel like, oh, I'm just too full and I just can't feel like I can't digest it. Once you get to a better place, like then yes, you can try to restrict because there is, amazing studies. But I also think that, again, maybe that's our population. We just like to be really drastic with everything. I think just a 12-hour fast is fantastic and very doable. It's stop eating after dinner and eat a normal breakfast, from stop eating after 6 and eat at 8 a.m. Like, I mean, that is a good solid time not eating.
Yeah.
So I don't think fasting has to be so dramatic. And maybe it's just because the people that tend to come to us are in a season where that's not okay. But if that's something you want to do eventually, I definitely think it's doable and it is a great research practice. I just don't think a lot of people are ready for it.
Yeah, I love that perspective. I think that's so huge because I think there's been a lot of talk too on, it's not great for hormone balance. And I think from my perspective, a lot of it has to do with the fact that you are just stressing your body out more if you're not in a season to do that, right? Like if you're already stressed, your body's already stressed. If you're already dealing with hormone issues, if you're already dealing with gut health issues, if you're already dealing with all the other things, we don't need to add something else to stress our bodies out, like not getting in enough food or shortening that window that, we're eating in. So yeah, I love your perspective that it can be great, but we need to be in the right season to do it. And it needs to work for us. And it's okay if it doesn't work for us and it's not our season. So yeah, that's so huge. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I love that. Good explanation. It's such a big thing. I have friends ask me about it all the time. And I'm like, it is literally different for everyone. It's different for just like anything, right? Anything is so nuanced, which is why I love having these conversations here on the podcast. And we try to stay as generalized as possible, but it's so much of it is like, okay, here's some good advice for where to start, but it is nuanced. So if you want more, this is why we go into testing and we go into these things. And I think a lot of, I've had friends say, oh, I listen to these podcast interviews and they're always like, well, just get tested. And I'm like, well, have you tried all the things that they mentioned? They're like, well, yeah. And I'm like, well, then it's time to get tested. It's,
it is. I think it's funny how we like to DIY diet, but like we never DIY changing our oil in our car or taking care of our teeth, like going to the dentist, but like with food and nutrition, like everyone just wants to DIY, but like it is truly customized. And this is coming from someone who runs lots of labs. And so even with PCOS is a great example. Just because Karen and Brittany have PCOS, support is completely different. Someone may need to focus on blood sugar. Someone may need to focus on inflammation. I mean, blood sugar definitely has inflammation, but maybe inflammation is a little bit more prominent in this person. So that's like same diagnosis, different support. And it all just comes down to like, well, what is it? I know people hate that. Well, it depends. Well, you got to get tested. Like, I don't really know. But I mean, you wouldn't say, oh, I think I have cancer, start treating for cancer. No, you get tested and confirmed, and then you get like, the treatment that you need. So I don't know. I have a love-hate relationship with the DIY, like nutrition portion of it.
Well, I think there's a good place to start for people who might not be able to afford testing right now, who need a place to start. It's a great place to be able to gain that knowledge and start there. But eventually there might come the point where you need that. And that's really important and really powerful too.
For sure.
So I'm getting a little off track, but I do before we finish up, I want to talk about PMS and gut health. We talked about how, hormones in general, you talked a little bit about this, right? Hormones in general can impact our gut health, but can an imbalanced gut specifically contribute to PMS? And what do you recommend for the woman who is dealing with chronic PMS I'm saying chronic PMS, even though I think a lot of people are like, well, PMS that happens every single month. Isn't that the definition of chronic?
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to happen every single month. There is healing for it. So talk to me about PMS, gut health, all the things.
For sure. Yes, definitely. I mean, it definitely can be connected, just like we mentioned earlier. I would say PMS definitely looks different for different people. So some people have low progesterone issues, some people have high estrogen. And then if it's that high estrogen, is it your gut reabsorbing the hormone? So I think detoxification also plays that role when I explained the different pathways that estrogen can detox. I think, like I mentioned, that 16-OH, certain pathways that are a little bit higher and not enough of the more protective pathway can definitely cause PMS symptoms. So is your supporting detox? Is it because there's a gut imbalance and you're reabsorbing estrogen? Is it because there's environmental toxins that you're being exposed to externally that is being what we call like xenoestrogens, so influencing your sex hormones? So things you're putting on your skin, cleaning your house with, candles, etc., all those parabens, phthalates, you name it, BPA, they all play a part in like sex hormone imbalances as well, which then plays a role into PMS. So I usually see either, I think, high estrogen or low progesterone. I want to say those are my top two for people who really struggle with PMS. But in the sense of what you can do, obviously addressing those root causes of why it may be happening. But one thing that I did try, and I love it, and I think this is pretty good, I feel like, for the average person, is by Soul CBD. It's their PMS Relief Harmony Blend. So it does have CBD, but I love it because it has B6, which helps support progesterone levels. And it has ginger root, helps a lot of the GI stuff that can happen. Chasteberry also can support progesterone levels. Dandelion root, which helps support like that, like natural like detox, and turmeric and all that stuff for like inflammation. So I would say this is such a good blend. I think I have a code NuviTrue. Yeah, I think it's NuviTrue. Everyone like gives me different codes, but NuviTrue 15% off. So that's a really great blend for PMS that you should try. But yeah, for the most part, I get tested.
Okay, can I tell you, I was literally I've never tried Soul CBD, and I was on the website this morning because it was recommended to me earlier this week. And I was like, I was looking at, for anxiety, I had a really bad experience with CBD, but it was like it was a full spectrum CBD. There might have been some THC in it. It ended up making my anxiety even worse. And I only tried it that one time. And I'm sort of like, I would like to maybe explore it again in a very low dose in a really safe, type of way. And so I'm looking up. They were recommended to me. And so I was researching. It was literally on my phone. That's what I was looking at when I told you I was at the dentist earlier. It is crazy that you just made that recommendation.
It is. I actually haven't. I will say I've tried a lot of CBDs for like anxiety, and to be honest, I honestly didn't find that much relief. I've tried a lot of the most popular companies, and I have found I do find relief with with Soul. Their drops are a little bit more intense, so this is actually one of their, I think it's limited time flavor. The blackberry pie is delicious, but I also try their gummies as well. I think these are lower dose, so if you wanted to like ease into it,
that's what I was looking at. It was the gummies,
But hands down, the only CBD that I feel like actually like helped me with anxiety, and when I did this like with PMS, I don't really have PMS, to be honest. So yeah, but everyone else that has PMS that I have referred to and tried it said it helped a lot. And I just know based on the blend and the herbs, I'm like, oh yeah, I can see why that would help with PMS.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love that. So I'm like so excited. I'm like, okay, I really need to go try it now.
Yeah. This is like a nudge. I'm supposed to try it.
Yes. Oh my gosh, so fun. I'll use your code too. So, okay. Do you have we've talked about so many things. I've had so much fun talking about everything from food to supplements to lifestyle, gut health, hormone balance, anxiety, mood, all of the things. I could talk to you for hours more.
I know. I love talking about it.
Oh my gosh, it's so fun. And there's so much more to talk about. And I think ultimately it comes down to there are a lot of things that we can do. There's also resources out there to help us if we are struggling with these things. But what are any of your like last pieces of wisdom or advice or things that you want the woman listening to know? Maybe things we haven't touched on or something that you kind of want to re-emphasize?
I would say, start with the basics. I think that's something everyone can do, even like without testing. Like start with the basics. With food, like answering the question, can you grow it? Can you kill it? If you can answer one of those questions, you know that you're probably eating a real food. Assessing your stress, like actually assessing your stress. I know everyone says it, but please like actually take a look at that. And then getting movement in, of course. And I don't think we talk too much about exercise, but getting movement in. And I know a lot of women love cardio or just think that cardio is their end all be all for weight and all that. And honestly, like strength training is honestly more where it's at. And that's like the most anti-aging thing you can do. And also not forgetting like the small movements. They make a huge difference with just like walking and just, making sure you're walking like 8 to 10,000 steps. And that plays a huge role at the end of the day. So not minimizing those small things as well.
Yeah, I think, that's such a good piece of advice just overall, not minimizing the small things. Those small things really do add up, whether it's movement or the small things we can do to improve the way that we are eating, the way that we're reducing our stress. Yeah. Yes. I love it so much. So I have some really fun rapid fire questions I love to ask at the very end. Yay. But before we jump to those, I would love to just share with my listeners where they can find you, social media, website. How can they work with you?
Yes. You can find me over on Facebook. Well, who honestly is on Facebook, honestly, for business? No one. So find me on Instagram. I'm at Nuvitru Wellness, Nuvitru Wellness, all one word. That's where we mostly hang out. It's our favorite place to be. And then our website's www.nuvitruwellness.com. And that's where you'll find all of our labs. You can download samples. You can see what we offer, packages, pricing. I'm really transparent about it because I don't want to be like, I don't know. As a consumer, I hate when it's just like, boom, call, and then I'll share. No, I share my price with you before. So you can kind of get a grasp for like how we work and what we do and if we're your jam. But you can book a free call with me after that. If like, yeah, this looks good. Let's talk. And then on my podcast, Functional Nutrition Radio, where, I talk all things nutrition, different topics, not even nutrition, just healthy living in general. That's where you can find me.
Awesome. I love it. And we will put links to everything in the show notes so they can go and find you. And to be perfectly honest, I didn't know you had a podcast. And so now I'm going to go check your podcast out. I have over on Instagram, but yeah.
Yeah. I've been podcasting since like 2015. I used to do interviews a lot. I love them, but I think more people wanted to like learn straight from me. So we switched over to solo a couple years ago. And I still love it. I definitely don't feel like I promote it as much as I should have.
No, I had no idea you had a podcast, which is a problem because now I feel like I need to go binge your podcast because I want to hear so much more from you.
Right?
Oh my gosh. I love it. Okay. And obviously our listeners are podcast listeners, so they're going to go and subscribe right away. So I love it.
Yay for podcasting.
Okay, so last but not least, let's finish with some dessert, otherwise known as rapid fire questions. So are you ready?
Love it. Yes.
Okay, I think you answered this question already. But coffee or tea?
Tea, matcha, chai, my jam.
You mentioned matcha earlier, so I thought that was going to be your answer. Question number 2, podcast or book?
Depends. It depends on what it is. So educational health stuff, book, textbook, but anything business, podcast.
I love it. What did you eat for breakfast this morning?
Actually, my mother-in-law's in town, so she made me breakfast. Gluten-free toast with grass-fed butter, an omelet with like ham, peppers, onions, and then I think she threw an orange. So it was really good.
That sounds delicious. Oh my gosh, I love it. What is your first choice when you're ordering takeout?
We are so lucky here in Austin of having so many like good foods. So I tend to prefer bowl places. So like Honest Mary's or Kava, like where you can just kind of build your bowl, grains, has a protein and just a ton of vegetables. So, and a sauce. So that's my jam.
I love that. Early bird or night owl?
Early bird, 100%.
Me too.
Everyone looks at me, he's like, how can you be so chipper in the morning? I'm like, I love it.
I think everyone is honestly so different. My husband cannot wake up in the morning no matter what we do. And I'm like, good morning. He's like, no. So, I get that. And last but not least, what does balance mean to you in this season?
And this is coming off of just finishing up my master's. So balance has been my lifeline for years, honestly, since I've been a mom. I was 18. But in this season, it's just making sure that where my priorities are. And right now it's just like business, I'll throw in school because I'm not done, and family and just self, and just making sure that those 3 main categories our top priority. And everything else that falls out of those three categories are put to the side, and feeling okay with saying no and putting that to the side, because I know this is like really what matters. And as long as I stay within that core, I feel balanced and I feel like I'm checking off all the boxes on all of them. So I don't feel depleted or missing out, like I'm missing out on anything.
Oh, I love that. It's so important. I think I have asked this question in different ways for years, and so much of it is, we've really got to prioritize. We've got to prioritize the things that are really, truly the most important, and let the other things go and be okay with saying no. So I love that. And that brings us back to how important it is to reduce stress for our hormones and for our gut, right? So it's always full circle around here. So, oh my gosh, Lahana, this was such a great conversation. I had so much fun. Like I said, I could keep talking to you for so long.
Ditto.
So we will definitely stay in touch. Thank you so much for being on the podcast, for giving us your time and your knowledge today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Healthy Balance Mama podcast. If you loved it, would you take a screenshot and share it with a friend over on Instagram and tag me in it? It helps me so much to know what you love and are taking away from each episode. If you really loved it, would you hop over to iTunes and give me a star rating and review? Every rating and review helps this podcast be seen and heard by more women who need to hear the message of balance and wellness without deprivation. It's the best free gift you could give me. And as a reminder, the information and opinions on this podcast are meant for education and inspiration only, and are not to be taken as medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Please consult with a trusted practitioner before making any changes. Have a beautiful day, friend, and I'll see you in the next episode.